Hey deep divers, welcome back. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to leave your thoughts down in the comments. So today we're doing a deep dive that's a bit different. We're not going to be looking at a whole bunch of different perspectives, but instead we're going to be focusing on one bold prediction about the 2024 election.
Yeah, what's interesting here is that we're dissecting just one opinion piece. We
Exactly.
really get to analyze one author's argument, their evidence, and really see if their reasoning kind of holds up.
Yeah, and see how it ages.
Yeah, exactly.
This piece is by David Rothkopf, and it was published in the Daily Beast on November 1st, 2024, right before the election.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a gamble. He's claiming that Kamala Harris wouldn't just win, but win decisively.
And he's kind of going against the grain, too, because a lot of the polls at the time weren't showing such a clear victory for Harris.
Right. This wasn't just a prediction, it was a statement. Okay, so let's unpack this. Rothkopf sets the stage by framing the election as this clash between generations. Harris represents this new wave of demographic change, while Trump symbolizes a pushback against that change. Does this idea of generational shifts driving politics hold up in political science?
Yeah, it's a common thread for sure. You think about it. New generations often come with new values, new priorities, new expectations, and those can absolutely translate into political change. Rothkopf's really tapping into that idea by positioning Harris as the face of the future.
Okay, and it's not just about policy, is it? He really emphasizes Harris's campaign style, the flawless execution, the energy, her choice for VP, how they completely own the digital campaign game. He makes it sound like this well-oiled machine just cruising to victory.
Yeah, and it's an interesting approach because he sort of sidesteps deep policy discussions and focuses more on how competent and unstoppable the campaign seemed.
Right.
But it does make you wonder, can a campaign win on style alone? Is he oversimplifying things a bit?
Yeah, because there's got to be more to an election than just looking good.
Yeah, exactly.
Rothkopf also digs into the financial side of things. He contrasts Harris's fundraising, which he describes as grassroots and efficient, with Trump's, which he paints as bogged down with legal fees and just gimmicky merch. Is this kind of typical of campaign finance, or is he highlighting an outlier?
Well, campaign finance is constantly evolving, and money definitely plays a big role in elections. So we can definitely look into whether Rothkopf's portrayal of those two campaigns' finances was, typical or not.
All right, and then he throws in this really interesting twist, the ghost voter theory.
Oh, okay.
He claims polls were missing a massive chunk of the electorate, specifically women, young voters, and these secret Harris supporters hiding in plain sight, even within Republican families.
Now, this is where things get really interesting because this speaks to the inherent limitations of polling and the possibility of these, hidden demographics actually swaying election outcomes. Polls capture a moment in time, but can they really miss, entire segments of voters? We know they aren't perfect.
Right. To back up his claims, Rothkopf cites specific polls, one from YouGov and another from CNN. The YouGov poll had Harris up by 7 points in New Hampshire, 4 points in Michigan, and 1 point in Pennsylvania, with her trailing by just 2 points in North Carolina.
Okay.
And the CNN poll showed Harris ahead by 5 in Michigan, 6 in Wisconsin, 1 in Arizona, and tied in Pennsylvania. He's using these polls to argue that a Harris win wasn't just likely, but it would be comfortable.
Yeah, he's painting a very clear picture here.
He is. But hold on a second, though. Rothkopf also throws in this claim that about 100 polls were bought and paid for by pro-Trump groups. He even quotes a Democratic strategist, Simon Rosenberg, who claims independent polls had Harris up by 2.4 points nationally. It almost sounds like he's trying to discredit any polls that don't fit his narrative.
Yeah, it definitely raises questions. Is this a genuine concern about biased polls, or is it a way to control the narrative? I think we have to consider the potential for partisan influence in polling and how that can shape perceptions.
Yeah. He goes even further, suggesting that most polls were probably undercounting the number of votes Harris would eventually receive. He points to early voting and voter registration data as evidence.
It's important to remember, though, that while early voting and registration numbers can show enthusiasm and potential turnout, they aren't a foolproof prediction of the actual results.
Right. They don't tell the whole story.
Yeah.
Now, beyond all the data and the polling talk, Rothkopf makes this appeal to, well, I guess you could call it the good sense of the American people. He draws a very stark contrast. Harris as the prosecutor, the public servant, the patriot, and Trump as the bad, the felon, the corrupt official, the traitor.
Oh, wow.
Strong words.
Yeah, it's a classic rhetorical technique. Appealing to people's sense of right and wrong, good versus evil. But does this actually resonate with voters, or is it too simplistic, too black and white for such a complex political landscape?
Yeah, I mean, real-world decisions, especially in politics, are rarely that clear-cut. But that's how Rothkopf tries to drive his point home. He ends with this passionate plea, urging readers to vote, volunteer, donate, basically do everything they can to ensure a Harris victory.
It's a powerful call to action, both then and now. It's interesting to look back knowing the outcome of the election and think about how much individual actions really matter in the grand scheme of things. Do grassroots efforts truly decide elections? Or are there larger forces at play that determine the outcome?
It's a question worth pondering. But before we get too deep into that rabbit hole, let's move on to the next part. Did Rothkopf's predictions actually come true? Was he spot on, or did he completely miss the mark?
Welcome back, deep divers. Before we jumped ahead, we were talking about David Rothkopf's bold prediction of a Kamala Harris landslide in the 2024 election. We explored his arguments, his evidence, his passionate pleas, but now it's time for the reality check. Did his predictions actually hold up?
He painted a very confident picture, didn't he? All those polls, the ghost voters. Did Kamala Harris actually sweep the election like he predicted?
Well, as we all know now, Kamala Harris did not win the 2024 election.
Wow, okay, so Rothkopf was completely wrong. What happened?
Yeah, his crystal ball was a little foggy that day. Remember all those polls he cited? The ones showing Harris with these comfortable leads in those key battleground states?
Yeah, he made it sound like it was a done deal.
Well, those polls didn't quite match up with how things actually played out. In fact, the election was much closer than Rothkopf predicted.
Okay, so where did his analysis go wrong? I mean, did he just misinterpret the data? Or is there something bigger that he missed?
That's the big question, isn't it? It seems like he might have overestimated the strength of Harris's support, especially among those ghost voters he talked about. Remember, he claimed there were all these hidden Harris supporters who weren't showing up in the polls.
Right, those secret Harris fans hiding within Republican families, ready to shock everyone on Election Day. That didn't quite pan out, did it?
No, not really. It seems those voters were either less numerous than Rothkopf believed, or they just didn't turn out to vote in the numbers that he expected. It's also possible that he underestimated the unwavering support for Trump, even with all the controversy surrounding him.
Right, because he really presented Trump as this, relic of the past, this fading force about to be swept away by history. Obviously, it didn't quite go that way.
Exactly. Rothkopf's narrative relied heavily on the sense of inevitability, right? Harris was the future, Trump was the past, and it was almost like this cosmic battle between good and evil, with Harris as the obvious champion.
Right.
But elections are rarely that simple and predictable, are they?
Not at all. I mean, they're messy, they're unpredictable, and they're influenced by a whole bunch of factors that are hard to measure. Rothkopf's analysis, while interesting, seems to have missed some of those nuances. So it sounds like he fell into a classic trap. He let his own biases and assumptions cloud his judgment, which led to predictions that didn't match reality.
Yeah, it's a good lesson for all of us. Even the most confident predictions can be wrong, especially in something as unpredictable as politics.
Okay, so even though his main prediction was off, was there anything that he got right?
He did accurately point out some key trends, like the growing importance of digital campaigning and the increasing engagement of certain demographic groups. He also touched upon the issue of campaign finance, which, as we discussed, plays a huge role in modern elections.
So he wasn't completely off base. He just got a little carried away with the whole Harris landslide idea.
Yeah, I think you could say that. His enthusiasm for Harris seems to have outweighed a more objective analysis of the political landscape. It happens.
It happens. Okay, so what can we take away from Rothkopf's misfire? I mean, what's the bigger lesson here?
I think it highlights how important critical thinking is, especially when it comes to political commentary. We need to be cautious of predictions that sound too good to be true, even if they come from sources that seem credible.
Right. Anyone can get it wrong, no matter how much they claim to know.
Yeah. And it's also crucial to, think about the sources, biases, and motivations. Are they trying to inform, persuade, or push a specific agenda? Asking these questions can help us navigate the often confusing world of political analysis and make better judgments for ourselves.
So it's about being a smart consumer of information, doing your own research, and not just accepting things at face value.
Exactly. And even when experts get it wrong, there's still valuable lessons to be learned.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've explored this political time capsule pretty thoroughly. Rothkopf's prediction might not have aged well, but his article still gives us an interesting look at the political climate right before the 2024 election. And it serves as a reminder to, think critically and be healthy skeptics. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's time we shift gears and look at the broader implications of opinion pieces like this. What do you think?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Like how a single opinion piece, published just days before the election, really tries to shake the narrative, tries to influence public opinion. Yeah, it highlights the persuasive power of a single voice, especially in the world of political commentary. Rothkopf was clearly trying to rally support for Harris and encourage people to take action. But it also makes you think about the role of opinion journalism and how we as consumers, consume information these days.
Right. It's like he was almost trying to will his desired outcome into existence through this article.
Yeah.
But it also raises questions about how should we be reading and interpreting these kinds of opinion pieces?
Yeah, I mean, opinion pieces are inherently subjective, right? They present a particular point of view, often with the goal of persuading the reader. And it's important to remember that they aren't necessarily presenting objective truth. It's one person's interpretation, filtered through their own lens of biases and beliefs.
So it's almost like reading a persuasive essay more than a neutral news report.
Exactly. And as informed citizens, I think we have to approach these pieces with a critical eye. We need to ask ourselves, what are the author's motivations? What evidence are they using to back up their claims? And are there any other perspectives that aren't being considered?
Right, because there are always multiple sides to every story.
Absolutely. And by engaging with diverse viewpoints, we can develop a more nuanced understanding of complex issues.
So the next time we come across a bold prediction or a really strongly worded opinion piece, we should all take a step back and analyze it. Don't just accept it at face value.
Yeah, think about the author's perspective, their biases, the evidence that they're presenting, and always seek out alternative viewpoints to challenge your own assumptions.
Because that's what makes us more informed and engaged citizens.
Exactly. Remember, knowledge is power, but only when it's paired with critical thinking and, a healthy dose of skepticism.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of political predictions and opinion journalism. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking. And be sure to let us know your thoughts on this episode down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more explorations into the fascinating world of information. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deeper.